Bleh. We are live. Some of the viewers may have caught our funny sounds we were just making. Uh, Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Mike, here for another Destiny Movie Night Hangout. Our movie today is Wings of Desire. And here is my wonderful guest, Tormod, all the way from Norway. Hi, Tormod.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
And for those of you who don't know, this great movie that we're reviewing, discussing, talking about today came to us from suggestion from Tormod. This is one of Tormod's favorite movies. Tormod, maybe you'd just like to start off by telling the viewers a little bit about, why this is a movie that you like.
Well, I was at I think I was at a supermarket with my mother, and I saw like these cheap movies for sale. They were like really low price, and I thought that, wow, German intellectual film. I must buy that so I can be smart and intellectual. And well, that was sort of the main story why I bought the film, and I really liked it afterwards, having seen it, and or most of it, anyways, and. So I saw the movie or most of it, and the story really appealed to me about how the story is built up, what the concept of this movie, the pictures, the colors or lack of colors, and characters and everything really appealed to me, and I really liked the movie, and I've been having like this semi-romantic relationship to it ever off. So like the title of it, Wings of Desire, or the Hymn Above Berlin, Himmel over Berlin, about post-war Berlin, Germany, about finding identity for that, and still to this day, I guess, finding identity for people who know about, experience, read about any matter, read about the Second World War and what went on, etc. So it's really an interesting concept, and to investigate for the movie. It's a pretty cool show, yeah.
Cool. And for anyone watching who hasn't checked out the movie, I'll give you just like a brief overview, and emphasis on a brief overview, because the movie definitely is rich in detail, both in the words that are used and also the cinematography. As Tormod mentioned, the movie goes back and forth between black and white depiction and pure color depiction. The story centers around two angels, you could say, basically, that are looking over or observing everyday human life in Berlin, in post-war Berlin. And what's fascinating about this is that the two angels, can see all of humans' thoughts. Like in any instance, like where they are, they see exactly what's going on in each individual human's mind. And the way in which they perceive, the way in which they're seeing the world is very black and white. Like, it is this, it is not this, it is this, which is fascinating, because as we go, we learn to see that, the angels just kind of have the data, if you will, for like that. It's just like the data. It doesn't necessarily have the meaning or significance to it that, let's say, an individual person places on a point. And thus they do not recognize like the different shades, the colors of things, so much so like individual humans do. And what is also fascinating about the angel point here is that basically their occupation, if you will, as angels in the heaven dimension on earth, if you will, is that their job is to testify basically into what they observed on any given day. And they don't have like a set protocol there to follow in terms of their investigations into what they're observing and making record of. Like for instance, in the movie, there's these two angels that it's focused around, and the two of them, are in close contact, sharing their observations with each other on a regular basis. And the one angel basically becomes fascinated with this lady in the movie who is in the circus. She's like a trapeze. Am I saying that word right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, she's like a trapeze performer, basically on like the high rope and the swing. Um, and she's got like a sort of childhood innocence about her, even though she's an adult. And there's a lot of like philosophical references that come about in him observing her character in terms of like her relationship with her living, and also just like her relationship towards death, because she's often performing a lot of these death-defying stunts with a lot of grace in seemingly situations where many people might not be so graceful in the performance about. And the other point I wanted to mention about the angels is that basically none of the adults can see the angels, but all the children have like full access to the angels, and they're totally obvious that they're there, which is an interesting point for anybody who's familiar with some of the stories within Destiny, the information about like children and their abilities in this world and like how the mind takes hold, is that the children basically have access to seeing things more so as they are, that typically gets suppressed as people like age and become more tunnel visioned into their particular perceptions on things. Now, one other point of interest I'll mention in this synopsis, which has gotten to be quite thorough, is there's like a movie director guy who's also a bit of a detective. He's also known in like America as Columbo, from the detective show. And basically, we see later on in the movie that he is aware of the angel's presence, and he, will in fact even talk to the angels. And this is out of the ordinary because, we're not really seeing that so much any of the other adults are so aware of the angels. Though we do see Marion kind of like asking herself questions, and seemingly like maybe she has some sort of glimpses, and we're never quite sure if she's going to like totally identify with the angel. Then we, as we go on, spoiler alert, we learn eventually that, well, the one angel like decides, he's had enough of basically being an angel, and he wants to like exist on Earth for real with like all his senses. And he's observed so much that he's decided like how he could go about living like a full day. And I found this to be quite interesting, Tormod, because he gets so detailed in the specifics of noticing all these simple pleasures in everyday life, like for instance, like sitting on a bench with other people and somebody like having to say excuse me or push their way by, to doing a crossword puzzle, to drinking a coffee and smoking a cigarette, to like all these seemingly you could say mundane things from the perspective of things that we do in our everyday life that to a certain extent we may regard as no big deal. The angel is like seeing a huge like point of significance in all these things, and basically he's just outlined how he could live like a full day, no problem, going from this to this to this to this to this. And then next thing we know it, he's no more in the heaven dimensions, but he's like here on Earth. And then the world of color opens up, and there he is. Basically he's gone from like just the observation mode to being like a directive, like practical participant in this reality. And it's a bit of a shell shock almost, which I also found to be ironic because he's basically just like somewhere laying on the ground, and he comes into this world and he's got this like shield of armor with him.
That's something. Ooh, you have something there.
Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I found it to be quite interesting and funny also because, when he was existing as like an angel with his immortality, like his eternal life, so to speak, uh, he wasn't really vulnerable to an extent of the everyday happenings of all the things that we humans are like extremely sensitive to, like that. Living in this world, we're sensitive to so many things, as there's so many relationships we're coexisting within that have an impact on our health and wealth and well-being, if you will. So the fact that the armor was coming off, to me, it kind of showcased that, like, okay, he doesn't have his shield anymore. Now he's like a direct participant here, and yeah, like death is for real now, kind of thing.
I would say that in that specific scene where he like comes to Earth, he takes on like a human form. It's like a picture of Jesus coming to Earth, taking on a human form, and
Yeah.
he bleeds from his head. He tastes the blood, and it's like the whole Christian religious thing about Jesus bleeding and we drinking his blood in church and so on. So that's a perspective of how of a man like an angle there about the human form contra the angel form or mythology existence. But I want to go back to a point you said about he wanted to become human because of he's talking to this other angel friend of a colleague of his and sitting in a car or they're doing something, and he says that I want to be human for not knowing everything, for feeling uncertain sometimes. And that explains very precisely the heaven dimension existence and the human existence, the physical existence, the life existence, where life, the human existence, the physical here on earth is all the practicality, all the creation, while the heaven existence is all the knowledge about how to get there. But they are like unable to create it because we have all the creative abilities sort of way on earth. And that I think is very inspiring, sort of, or interesting at least to picture out. And also, I look at when like scenery from when we see these angels standing with their wings on top of buildings or statues and so on, and that specific pictures reminds me of Matrix movie where Neon is standing around the buildings and jumping on buildings and falling from buildings and testing out the Matrix, sort of. There's like a picture for me about how I mean, I think that's maybe copy paste from Matrix, from this movie to the Matrix movie, perhaps idea anyways. And I find it very interesting the part where in the beginning where we see that this where the camera is taking us through all these people's apartments, where we hear them inside their heads. We're inside their heads all the time. They're talking, thinking this and that. Not so much nitty gritty, but that would be like a totally different movie, sort of, because that would be like on a total different level of depth or emotional level. But anyways, we hear them thinking, and it's very touchy, I think, to hear all these thinking and thoughts going on, sitting in front of the TV, smoking in the kitchen. All that, it's sitting on the train stations or in the trains and thinking, having thoughts, being locked within mind all the time. Very interesting perspective, I think. And also about going into the library where people learn to, or where people read and study things, and we all have all these, what they're reading what they're reading something, and you can hear them think what they're reading, sort of. And also the children in the library where they're starting to learn to think, sort of. You can almost sense that, and that is special, I think, and particular about metaphysics of thinking and being an observer in library. And those pictures, those scenes where we're in the apartments, we're in the library, we have this orchestra singing like, oh, and then we're going through all these pictures, and the angels sitting like on cool positions in this library, just being angels, nodding to themselves and recognizing each other in library while nobody can see them. It's very realistic, I would say, according to mythology, religion, and angels. Yeah.
Cool, Tormod. The point you mentioned there, that really jumps out at me is noting that like the distinction basically between the heaven dimensions and the earth dimensions, where the earth dimensions, it's like where the creative potential exists, yet the knowledge is not necessarily known, but everybody's like trying to figure things out, which kind of explains basically why everybody's mind is racing all the time, because it's always like working with bits of information in the point that it's in relation to. So it's like a go, go, go. And we're seeing that, there's not necessarily a lot of direction with the information, that it's not often being necessarily put into practical application, but yet, the wheels are spinning, like the mind is going, things are in motion all the time, versus, the other side of the coin there, the heaven dimension. It's like the angels there have all access to like all this info. They can see what's happening all the time. They know all this info. And then when we see, the angel who decides, he wants to be human, basically, and he makes the transformation, if you will, into like the earthly plane, where he merges his form into his like physical body, is that initially he wants to be told, everything. Like he wants to know everything, but he wants to just be like told all the answers without, really figuring anything out for himself initially. Where he, connects with Columbo there, the movie star, director, detective guy, and he basically tells him, he's like, "Oh, I can't just tell you everything. Like
No.
that's that's what life's all about. Is doing things, like participating here, figuring things out." And he's like, he kind of asks him, he's like, is there something that you're interested in or whatnot, or like, anything got your attention at the moment? And he's like, yeah, there's this girl. And he's like, oh, perfect, okay, like that's great, that's like a good point. And I found that to be kind of cool, because it's through our participation and engagement within relationships, and it could be with another, it could be like a male female, it could be with another person, it could be just with ourselves participating in different points, because no matter where we are at any time in this world, we're always engaged in various like relationships like playing out, because everything is here all the time, kind of thing. And so it really opens up the point of know thyself. And we see basically, and we only kind of get a glimpse of it by the time the movie wraps up, and it leaves like the viewer kind of wanting more into the story of like the process this angel has now walked as he's like merged with the physical here on this earth, because he's basically reiterated that sentiment of like that's what life is know thyself. And it kind of leaves you hanging, which is ironic, because there's like a follow-up movie to it to see, okay, maybe where does this go. But there's a lot to that, this whole know thyself point. And I can relate to that on a personal level in a lot of ways, where it's kind of like at different times I've gotten obsessed, if you will, with like knowledge and information in this world, is like wanting to know about this, wanting to know about that, wanting to know about this, whatever, and not necessarily always having been so grounded in the knowledge and information I was working with, to a point where the knowledge and information became very much just a point of like entertainment, where to create like a reaction out of me in various ways. And what's fascinating is that, in fact, I've actually in recent years begun to use like television shows and movies and documentaries, well, basically everything I participate in this world, really, as a point of working with information to see what reactions come up within myself as a point to like further engage my individual process of know thyself as self reflection.
Very interesting direction you're having there. I think that's really very to the point. I would like to look at a bit this other guy, this Colombo guy coming to Berlin, flying in, like sitting on an airplane, and he's like I think he's like this Stark character, thinking Kyoto, Trieste, Roma, Berlin. And he's like traveling the world sort of with his work and like being this, living this life sort of that he has created for himself as an actor. And he explains to this our main character that I was an angel once, and there are a lot of us sort of. And that right there is just selling us charlatanism today. I mean, it's I once was an angel, and I think that goes into a lot of our perseverance or imagination about people today that are, what shall I say, aware of that there might be something called past lives, and I want to purchase the new age version of it. It's just I was possibly this flesh 200 years ago or something like that, and then connecting this to having been an angel or something, and just living this mystical halfway psychotic dream of mind slaving, of course, and sort of buying into some of it, and buying the cool stuff from religion, which is a obvious solution way ahead of there or in the future there. But back to he explains that he says this specific. I was once an angel. Now I'm a human, and there are many of us. And I could think that people who go through lives, in school, work, etc., and they see that once I was this innocent child, being 3 or 4 or 5, having this specific memory that was granted to me, and then I had school and bullying and military and so on, you know. So all that concept of what we call life or society or existence is just just making our world go dark, you know, and making us into so-called humans, and with all our emotions, enslaving and mind and what shall I say, bullshit that we create in this world. So, but like the old grandpa there in the chair, thinking once I was an angel, so I go back to that when I die concept of selling people charlatanism to the sunshine, to the palm trees.
What I found also interesting about that point there of, you know, the angel versus, let's say, the human, you know, basically the two extremes, if you will, because like the heaven dimension and the earth dimension are very much polarized based on like the relationships with knowledge and information that exist in each one of them, you know, where so much so in the heaven, you know, the relationship we see with the angels is kind of I would say kind of neutral, from the perspective that, yeah, there's some like things they take note and they go into like a positive this or like a negative this, but they're very much just like neutral within it all, because they're not participating, they're just observing, and they're just taking note of, you know, all these different happenings, and they're not really, you know, even if like maybe they deem something to be a bit positive or a bit negative, for the most part, they're just kind of like holding themselves together within like a particular state of, for the most part, just being, you know, presenting this image of that, like, okay, you know, I'm like this, I'm just an angel, this, like, got to just keep it together kind of thing. When we see for those angel guys is that, you know, they don't necessarily have all their shit together, but it's just like, this is their job. They're still kind of operating like a job, just kind of like the human in a lot of ways. But you could say the earth dimension is, you know, it's more, you could say negative, like grounded in negativity more so, because it it looks to be a little bit more chaotic in a lot of ways, in that there's not necessarily so much direction happening um, in the way things are happening. Yet at the same time, within that all, we kind of see this come through with that Columbo character, detective guy, who's basically living the heaven on earth point, you know, where he's kind of merged the angel world, like the heaven existence with the earth existence, and he's very like receptive of everything here, and he's taking notes. You see him taking notes all the time, and he's drawing pictures, and he's making notes on the pictures, like his, you know, and it's showcasing his own individual thought process. His thought process is very, very different from the majority of people that are in more of, you know, you could say a reactionary type state of participation, where, like you mentioned earlier, he, you know, he's built kind of a cool life for himself, and he's really enjoying every moment of it, and very grounded at the same time within it all, which, you know, to me emphasizes the process we're walking here in this world. I mean, all of us, in you know, in grounding ourselves within our physical bodies here, and investigating like the nature, like the origins of our minds, our thinkings, like our feelings, our emotions, and yeah.
Yeah. Interesting concept you said about the neutrality part. Angels being the neutrality part, or being like really serious, being like, I'm doing this right now, I'm sort of locked into this picture that I see in front of me, I see all these angles, and I'm this angel. And today I would think that today we have this concept called light warriors, or in anyhow religious beings or spiritual beings, enlightened beings that are calling themselves light workers or light warriors or rainbow warriors or what have you not. So, and I would like to get a little personal here, because with this light warrior, I mean, the war we are having here is always about ourselves, it's always inwards about ourselves. We are our own worst judge. We are individual, our own worst enemy, if you like. And it is ourselves we have to sort of win over, and sort of create this peace concept, peace concept of within one's nucleus of self, and from there on make that prosper and grow from within yourself, from within your physical into being, so on. And I just realized I was going through my shit back here with writing, and I realized I had this serious backshotting issue within myself from when I was 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, a young boy. I was a young boy, and I realized that since I could not grasp the concept of God, since I could not grasp, understand, experience, see, believe, whatever in this God character, I'm able to have vocabulary to speak about it. What else? I suppressed all this within my body, and this horrible and what shall I say, blunt and dumb and whatever backshots was created within me. It's a bit of an off track from the story, but it's about how we live today. I mean, the concept of having had wings on our backs as a bird, or seeing a bird and seeing this eagle. I'm a spiritual. I'm the one with this eagle. I'm the one with this sparrow, and so on. The whole concept of religion. It's always back to self. I mean, it's always back to who am I as observant of this movie, observer of whatever, and establishing that nucleus of peace within, and to be without the disturbances of energy, psychology, and mind bothers, and what have you not, that will set you on sort of higher, and sort of tip you off your course, sort of.
Fascinating perspectives there, Tormod. Would a few points come up for me in listening to your sharings here. One point that's kind of funny is just like, yeah, taking note of the whole, in our human cultures, how the angel point is so much, synonymous with, like you say, the wings on the back, whatnot, so that they can, get high into the heaven. And if we look at also what you're saying with the whole, like light warrior point, where basically, they're defined as like the greatest good here in this world, and how, they're like in the ultimate war. That so much to me showcases like the greatest deception here in this world, as the whole like white light of enlightenment kind of thing, where it's like all focused on, positive energy, like being positive, this, that, whatever, which is sort of like fairy tale like, fake, glossed in bullshit, if you will, pardon my frankness, um, because it's like holding together like all the shit and just projecting this image of love and light, when, the reality of all the shit here is not love and light, you can say. And it's funny because the whole like light warrior movement is sort of, it's like, why would anyone need to be a warrior, so to speak? Because there's like conflict, war. Like, what is, a warrior regarded as? Someone who's, this great fighter. And if we reflect this like back within ourself, and like what you're mentioning, like where's like the greatest, where's the greatest enemy, if you will, like the police, or the place where you least expect to see it, which is like yourself, your own mind, the relationships we participate within and as our own mind. And so, we're brewing up this like this light, this dissonance, this friction, this fire, so much so as how we polarize the world. And to me, it really showcases the like, the ultimate separation of ourselves from ourselves and all of existence here is life, um, because it's like the it's going into like the split of the big ego versus like the little ego kind of thing, where, being a light warrior, you're like the big ego, like you're so great, da da da, and you're in opposition with those that are like less self-defined, as you might put it, or like I might put it. Basically, they're not like so positive in their love and light expression, which yeah, showcases like how we can basically get lost within our own minds of defining and judging this world through the realms of like our mind, and in like various categories of our own ego, based on like how we polarize different word and world relationships here, by making ourselves like, inflated or deflated kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Another cool, cool what you're saying, and I agree fully, completely. And the concept of presenting something or someone that could be described as God in this movie would to me be this old character, this old man walking into the library and walking around looking for Potsdamer's Platz, and how I read on Wikipedia that he is like. His name is Homer, and that is like the Homer from the Greek gods, or the Epic of Peace, whatever that is. And and obviously he is very old. I mean, he could be in his 80s looking at this movie, anyways. And I think that he is also describing the world around him as it's very lost, it's confused, it's lost, it's unclear, it's blurry. But he has something interesting to assess when he's looking in a book. I think he has some interesting quotes, even though he's obviously very lost and confused, or senile, or what would you call it. He has some interesting observations. And I would like to say that it says that about freedom. about how can we have freedom and peace if we don't talk about having it. I think that's really interesting observation when he's looking through a book, and you can see this angel, the one with the characters listening to his head, sort of, and it's like you just had that thought, wow, sort of amazement of this old man looking through a book and having a thought going off, and that is an interesting quote from this film, I think, about how can we have freedom and peace if we don't talk about it. So I mean, in modern world and so on, and I think that also the concept that's in the circus where they also speak some French, and we're looking across this field of circus, the elephant doing some tricks there, and this like open field of grass, and there's a circus, there's some quiet gypsy music and circus music, and there's this notion that gets me, like Germany is neighbor of France, and to have a peace with those neighbors is very important. And yeah, right there, it starts with a nucleus inside that from within myself. I have to be calm, stable, peace at within myself, from my physical being, to then spread that peace, that ease, that stability, that honesty, that so on to my surrounding, my neighbors. And so that is like how I read that about him searching around in this field and sitting around the chair out in the open and just observing things and trying to grasp himself, really. Yeah.
That brings up a couple points for me, Tormod. One, in taking like specific note of the Homer character, or the character who's portrayed as like Homer, the old man there. It showcases basically, I think, the self-honesty point within everyone is that, you know, everybody has these moments of clarity, if you will, where, you know, you can see things for real as they are in different situations where you know, you're confronted with like the reality, the scope of the situation in which you're participating within. And I think we see that in different instances as the angels like are observing like different, you know, thoughts of people throughout their days, where we see, you know, these profound insights, realizations. Yet the point, I think, which ties it all together really cool and is so much so like a practical solution for us in this world here in today, like, you know, where we all are at in this world, this big place, is the communication point. Is that, you know, it's in sharing, it's in working together, like a real sociability, in that you know, it's a teamwork thing. That if we have these insights, these realizations, these points, you know, that come up within ourselves like rather naturally as a result of participating in this, that, or whatever, that's like our gold to share. You know, like that's what we have that's worth sharing for real here. And, you know, that's the real knowledge, because that's so much so I see the, you know, the testament of our living here in this world as like the knowledge that's gone through application, that's been basically, you know, proven to be real, factual, because it's a result of our living here in this world. And that's the stuff that can, you know, assist and support others to establish clarity on, you know, different points of understanding that they're working with, that maybe they haven't tested out for themselves. Because, you know, then the knowledge, information so much so becomes a means of cross-referencing, where we can, you know, like check that out within ourselves and play with it and participate within a point. And thus, you know, what we're using is so much so practical here, and it's not just you know, throwing shit at each other like without, you know, much regard.
Yeah, interesting. What you're saying. And that is something that I picked up recently. to walk the word interesting. So yeah. About spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. I think that because I told you in the beginning that I only saw half the movie or some of the movie earlier on, and I would end it because I would be like full of information, full of details, all the concept of the movie. It would really get to me. So I would stop it just to digest it, sort of. That's just how I how I function, sort of. So. And I recently watched the whole show, and spoiler alert, there is this scene in the end where he meets this circus trapeze lady, and they talk, and they're in a bar, and it's colorful, and it brings in this sugarish, to me, sugar coating that was really not needed to my opinion, because. Well, because I think that they were selling their souls at that moment to the Hollywood concept, or whatever concept of always having that happy-hearted ending, sort of. That is my opinion on it, anyways. But still, still I would recommend watching it. Yeah.
Interesting perspective, Tormod. I mentioned to you a little bit earlier that I found the point there of the angel who, you know, basically becomes human or merges with the earth, however you want to like look at it, and who meets up with Marion, the circus lady. I found that to be like quite interesting and poking at a lot of existential questions that you know, humans have throughout their life, and often the movie, you know, poked at the point that children often have so many of these existential questions quite naturally, and you know, often they're fishing to adults for answers, and oftentimes adults are getting frustrated because these are often so much so points that have been like suppressed within them throughout the years because maybe they had them when they were younger and they weren't necessarily so much so addressed. So like a sort of like playful childhood innocence like to that. And what I found interesting about this whole relationship between Marion and the angel dude, human guy, um, is basically that, you know, their stories were both, you know, rather unique. And I mean, I guess you can say that about everybody here in this world and anybody in relationship with one another, that each person's story is so much so individualized and unique. The significance I take from that also, though, is to me, it really emphasized how relationships can be like a great point of support for one another in this world. Like I was mentioning earlier, and kind of you know, complimenting what you were saying about how, you know, communication in this world is such a key. But you know, like our effectiveness to sharing communication with each other really isn't all that possible if we don't interact with others in our immediate environment, you know, have these intimate relationships, if you will. And to me, I think it just showcased a lot of potential development for each character there, in going forward, because like both of those characters we saw had walked, you know, quite an extensive individual process history before they, you know, came into each other's life. And it was very serendipitous. You know, you could even say like, you know, point of synchronicity, if you will, which also the point that I've been noticing more and more for myself is that, you know, everything is so specific. You know, like you can say everything is a coincidence, if you will, because it's a matter of coincidences, is like two simultaneous incidences happening at the same time. And, you know, note a disclaimer on what I'm saying here from the perspective that it's not to, you know, make believe the significance of shit in why it's happening the way it's happening by going into our mind of like, polarizing the different experiences with an emotion or feeling connotation from it, based on like getting on a high or a low or trying to hold it together in a neutral, but just seeing the gravity of the situation for what it is and realizing it's it's always like a matter of like the specifics of the information that we're working with here, because so much so, our reality, you want to say it's like systematic, if you will, it's dealing with like the specifics of information. So, this interaction, that interaction, the fact how we're communicating here is quite specific to
About
everything.
it's all about defining there, Mike. I would say defining something like the definition, and then you're there, out you go, definition.
For
From,
sure. For
from
sure.
from our friend Shiron Last on YouTube there. I would like to look into this thing about the concept of starting again, sort of looking for identity again, him becoming a human, and starting doing things over again, and that sort of search for identity, trying to like the old harmonica going over again, like the old tune, like I've done this before 1,000 times. Here we go again, sort of starting over again, and how that actually can be sort of narrowed down in a scope or something into one's own breath, and that infinitely or eventually one's own breath is where one starts over again. For each breath one takes, inhale, I embrace what is here. I exhale, I express myself, sort of mannerism, and that breath. Each breath is then a total testimony or definition, if you like, about how one is stable or not, about having that honesty, that self-honesty, and so on. So it's very much about how we define the concepts, and from the breath awareness to have a balanced mind, body, beingness, and to sort of look beyond that triangle shape and just play with it, and to know that if I, as a nucleus, as a compartment of myself, as a item, or as my physical, can have that stability, calmity, ease within myself, that will spread, that will multiple, like into coincidence and happenings from the little to the small to the great of creation. And that is, per definition, also what we're doing here in this existence of clearing out these passages, sort of these words, these definitions, these worlds, to create a better life for all of us. Yeah.
Very cool, Tormod. Very cool. I totally agree with what you say there. One point I'd like to add on that just kind of jumps out at me with regards to the whole definition, and if we look at the movie, just the way the definition of things is so much so polarized in like the high definition of the color versus the lower definition of the black and white, and we could even like take that further into the tuning of your television from the perspective of like how scrambled the channels are or not, based on like that, like each of us being so much so like a television, and that our communications are so much so our a reflection of our vision of how we see things based on how we framed our mind with the definition of our individual words. And I think the real tuning, coming in with clarity in the sound of the picture presentation we present as our words is in and as the holistic definition sounds of and as the words we speak from moment to moment. Like basically, the more grounded we are with each of the words we speak, because we're sounding them like out, resonating them like from the small of like all of our cells in our body, to the totality of ourself as all of our body, that comes through, and it's here all the time. And I see, if we reflect this back to Desteni, that's been just such an awesome tool, like our own individual body as a cross-reference point, because we're able to work with our mind in, basically using the tools of like writing and how we structure our writing, for instance, with like, for example, self-forgiveness as a specific tool to investigate the particularities of our word and world relationships, and so forth. From there, how we're able to like move it into, corrective / directive solutions as commitments we're able to make and test out for ourselves to, really substantiate the know thyself points as the ultimate like author authority of an as our reality here as a co-creator. Yeah.
Most definitely. And once again, we are back looking at the sort of division of us humans being alive on Earth today, and our physicality, practicality, doing the work, doing whatever action we do, living our lives and participating and doing with the best we can, and the metaphysics, the Bible, the heavens, the Vatican, if you like. Whatever concept we have of angels and God and so on, where they have all the knowledge, all the writings, all the recipes, all the knowledge how to push things through from religions and Lao Tzu and everyone that has been and that is, from that into us practically having to go to school for 12 or 15 years to study all this and learn all this by design and concept and structure, and getting lost in ourselves and needing to find back to that stability, that self-honesty, that sincerity, that childlessness, that child within and the star above, etc. And so it's very much like bringing that heaven to earth, or creating that space for heaven to be created on earth, because we can create utopia, because we have the possibility to it, and we must because we can.
Awesome, Termont. Yeah, I totally see that. It, to me, to summarize that, or to paraphrase, or to say that in another way, but to emphasize the same point there, I really see that is the self-responsibility of the times we're faced with here. From the perspective that it's a moment by moment management application, and creation, so much so as there's so much happening that makes up the present of the moment, that we're always here as part of the collective whole, part of the team. And in being here as part of the team, it's in really developing our self-expression, our capacities for response abilities, as what we can do to make this place most excellent in all ways. And obviously that starts within ourselves, in basically, yeah, developing ourselves in ways that we see are cool or awesome, are great, and thus sharing these points, collaborating with others to further develop new relationships, new ways of thinking that are cool and awesome, so that we can create a world that we're happy to look back on, or and to see the generations to come, that this is what's been created, what's been developed, what's been defined, has so much potential here, is so awesome in so many ways, that it's the gift that we'd like to receive, it's the gift that we'd like to give, kind of thing.
The gift that keeps on giving. Yeah,
totally. Tormod, this has been an excellent, awesome hangout time chatting with you. It's just been awesome. We've just kind of opened up so many points. I think what's been cool about our conversation here is it just really showcased the point of complementary actions, where you share some points, and then it's like, I share what I realized, what I noticed about that, communicate on that, and then it goes back to you, and then you share, and then I share, and it's kind of like the song that never ends. Like we could just keep going, going, going. But basically, due to Hangout time restraints and us having other responsibilities here, I think this is an appropriate time to wrap up our Hangout here for today. But I will give you the option, Tormod, to share any final words here before we say our farewells.
Well, I would just like to say that check out the movie. Sometimes it's out there. Check out the movie. It's a cool show to learn about movies. Thank you very much. That is my share.
Awesome, Tormod. Thanks again for being here. And for anybody tuning in or who will be tuning in post the live viewing, I'd also just like to make mention that the Hangout for the following week, we will be looking at the documentary Cowspiracy. Yes, that is Cowspiracy. One word, kind of like a play on conspiracy, but Cowspiracy. Who knows what will open up? I haven't seen the documentary yet. I've only just been informed of it, and it's been requested. So again, if there's something you really want to watch, see, voice yourself, because it's in the communication that how we perpetuate good communication into developing, opening up points. So yeah, without further ado, I bid you all farewell, and thanks again, Tormod, and I hope to have you on again soon. Awesome.